episode of the DailyFlip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through a story talking about Donald Trump's total mental collapse, or what people are saying is a total mental collapse. I feel like we're back in Trump 1.0 when they don't go after his policy and they just go after the man himself, and there doesn't seem to be much credit to this one. It comes from our friends over at alternate.org, which is a more progressive outlet, so it makes sense, but I'll let you determine, and I will provide the links in the description so you can go watch the clip yourself. So with that, let's jump into our daily debate. Is Donald Trump falling in your mind? If you are a person who is progressive, you probably don't have I don't want to say an unbiased opinion, but you probably have a pretty weighted opinion on the matter. If you're someone in the middle, maybe you have a more moderate opinion. And if you're someone on the right, you probably have lots of thoughts and probably an a bias, but seemingly and maybe in your mind unbiased position. But is Donald Trump falling? Is his pastiche, is his glimmer falling? I think you could answer that question objectively. Love to know what everybody's opinions are. Try to let your bias not influence it. But with that, let's jump into the article. Like I said, it comes from alternate.org. Headline reads, "Total Mental Collapse. Trump brutally mocked after babbling rant." And I'm going to be 100% frank with you. When I first read that, I thought to myself, who is this by? Oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. First off, if that is the mentality that people have in this world of politics, it is shameful. It is not how we should be doing publications, news media. And I don't mean to say that to be mean to alternate.org. I'm saying it is sad that our culture, and even I, myself, as someone who wants to report on as much as possible, wants to bring all these stories to the fore, who is willing to entertain different arguments in order to have these sort of conversations. It's sad if it's that programmed into our brain to say, this source is completely biased. This source probably is just saying something outrageous in their headline in order to get the clicks. And obviously, it worked, because guess what? I clicked on it. But that doesn't mean that they get scot-free. They get away scot-free after I read it and I say, oh, that's complete baloney, and I just move on, okay? And then let their clicks go on and on. Maybe by highlighting this and actually pointing it out and bringing up the fact that this, once again, sounds like a Trump 1.0 article, maybe it'll change something. Probably won't. We don't get that many views here on this channel. It's not actually the point, though, because if it's just one person who walks away with a better opinion, if it's just one person who walks away understanding what's going on, that's all it takes. One person every single video. I've posted a lot of videos, okay? And every single one, hopefully, will bring a little bit more insight to one person. That's all it needs. One person, one effect, one change. So with that, let's actually jump into a little bit of the context here. Quote, Trump was in a meeting, and I'll now read from the article, quote, "Meeting with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Trump declared, quote, and the other thing I say to Europe, we will not allow a windmill to be built in the United States. They're killing us," end quote. Now, for those of you who are listening here, that sounds like Trump's hyperbole. If you're a person who doesn't like Donald Trump, you're like, oh, that is the standard Donald Trump right there. Oh, they're killing us, being hyperbolic. If you're someone who likes Donald Trump, you think, oh, well, maybe he's being a bit over top. Maybe you agree with him. Maybe you're a giant windmill truther. I'll be honest, I am not one of those, but maybe you are. Great, you can live in there. And maybe you think he's 100% literal, though I think a lot of people will understand he's being hyperbolic. But then here's the next quote, and I'm going to actually read it out, and I want you to tell me whether or not it makes sense to you. And then I also want you to go and watch the clip. But we'll get to that here in a second. Quote, "They're killing the beauty of our scenery, our valleys, our beautiful plains." And I'm not talking about airplanes. I'm talking about beautiful plains, beautiful areas in the United States. And you look up and you see windmills all over the place. It's a horrible thing. It's the most expensive form of energy. It's no good. They're made in China, almost all of them, end quote. Now, the article points out that HuffPost's Ed Maza comes in and quickly fact checks a lot of what he's saying. Oh, is it actually the most expensive? Oh, were they all made in China? And some of his other claims in the video itself are that, oh, we can't actually bury these because of the fiber material that they are made out of, the giant propellers that are on these windmills. In that case, he's actually pretty accurate. We don't have a sustainable way to bury or get rid of those quite yet, though recycling seems to be an option that they're building out. Point being that, of course, the HuffPost journalist doesn't mention the things he got right, only the things he got wrong. Then again, that's fair. But when you haven't seen the entire clip, you only think, oh, well, all the things mentioned right there, not the rest of it, even though it's only an extra 30 seconds maybe, is wrong. But does that sound like a rant of someone who is mentally unwell? I remember that we had a president who is mentally unwell, who couldn't complete sentences, who wandered around stages, who literally, in his campaign, said, I'm a mobilizer campaign to help shore down Trump under pressure. And I have that clip on my phone, saved as an audio bite, because it is that hilarious. Or when he says, if we finally defeat Medicare, and come on, guys. If you can't accept it at this point, we were saying it back then, and by we, I mean everybody online who's paying attention. We were saying it back then, and that is a person who is truly in mental decline. Is Donald Trump as fast speaking as he was during 2016? No. But is that a mental breakdown? Is that a failure of his faculties? No, it sounds like an old man saying what he believes to be true. And if you go watch the video, I promise you he is just as in control of his faculties as he was a few years ago. Why is it important? One, because the headline itself is trying to get us to click and to rage bait you. And if you're a person on the right, then yeah, you've probably seen the clip before, or at least you had heard about it, and then you're a little bit angry. Whoa, what are they saying here? If you're someone on the left, oh, look, Donald Trump's having mental decline. It affirms some of your biases, and it gets you a little bit angry that Donald Trump is making outrageous claims like he is. Why is it an issue? Why? Because in the case of the media, you have, once again, just like in the last administration, a news apparatus, a reporting apparatus that is meant to aid the president, and another apparatus that is meant to hurt the president. Now, the left-wing organizations and the left-leaning media is more copious, more numerous, though of course that is changing. Why do we care? You're saying that, Alex, why do I care? You're ranting about the bias in media. We know there's bias in media. This is a fundamental problem. When you cannot have sources that even relay truth. This includes Fox News, in this case, in this administration, Daily Wire, trying to back up whatever Trump says, trying to backfill whatever he says. I promise you, when Donald Trump says something crazy that I truly think is crazy, or a policy position that is not okay, you've heard from me on it. Okay? Are we forgetting about the tariffs here? That was one of my longest standing issues. Still is an issue. Don't get it twisted. And remember, when we have a news media that is so geared towards playing into these political biases, and I don't just mean that into your political biases or your bias in this particular case, playing into that and trying to gin you up, trying to get you involved, trying to get your clicks because you don't like somebody, but also when it plays into the division of the biases, you no longer have stories, or headlines of stories at least, the first thing that you pay attention to, and even stories themselves, that are able to accurately summarize and put into perspective what is going on, but rather you have content farming. You have people that are actively trying to push the edges of what's allowed in speech, and that's fair enough. Free speech allows them to say outrageous things, but they're actively trying to push these boundaries, push against their own side, and allow for this extra room to say even more outrageous things that are not true, while also trying to push the other side to a point where they will absolutely defend what is going on, even in the most extreme cases where it is not acceptable. This is a world in which we cannot communicate. We can't even have conversations among ourselves, even among factions within certain political partisan organizations. And that's not to say that it's the end all be all. It's the end of communication. Of course, people are normally having these conversations, but at what point the conversations between people have become more hardened, they've become much more combative, because people are able to self-isolate into their own form of news consumption and so on and so forth. And at what point does this outward bias and hatred start to infiltrate conversations even more. I know online is one thing, but even in person, there will be a point, in my opinion, where not only are we in different worlds and we're looking at different stories, but we have complete and utterly different assumption biases from the first second that we see something. Right now, I can look at alternate.org and say, hey, well, probably something going on here, but they've at least put out some good pieces in the past. Not everything is infected by this. And I can go and say, okay, we're going to critically evaluate this story. And Fox News, same thing. But there will come a point when our personal biases are so hardened that it permeates into normal conversation with people. We won't even want to engage their underlying suppositions that they may put towards arguments you cannot necessarily understand, but also it is no longer even possible to cross-pollinate your news sourcing because it will be so terrible that both sides, no matter who is the person being attacked or criticized, will have their affirmation bias locked in simply by the nature of who it is. That's my opinion. I think that is an extreme example, though I think this story highlights the fact that we're falling back into similar positions here. And I think my initial guttural reaction to the story proves the point, because I like to be a person that reads both sides. I lean one way rather than the other, and yet I read articles from the other side every single morning. Well, most mornings. This last week has been a little bit rough on that, but the point being, I try to expose myself to both, and I don't know how long my resiliency can last when I look at stories that are too bloviated and too affirmational of people who should be criticized in certain ways from that same perspective, and the other side that simply attacks and tries to find anything that is remotely close to facts and extrapolate it to be a story. So, with that said, if you want to check out this article, you want to check out the video, it's actually embedded in the Twitter post that has the longer rant embedded in it. Will be linked in the description below. The like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip. Also, if we're 10 years, 5 years on, I leave room to be wrong. I leave room for my opinion to change. I am just a person going through the world just like the rest of you, and if my ideology was wholly set and there was no changing it whatsoever, I would be in a much different place than I was when I was 16, 20, 22, 23, so on and so forth. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.